أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على المصطفى محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم يا كريم، واللعنة الدائمة على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. In our last lesson, we were speaking about a few points. We mentioned a few points regarding compatibility between spouses, and we shed light on a verse in Surah An-Nur which speaks about al-khabithun wal-khabithat and al-tayyibuna wal-tayyibat. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah An-Nur, let me pull out the verse for you.
I would see some say a good guy is like a bad girl.
Ahsan, right? So Allah says, Al-khabithatu lil-khabithin, Al-khabithuna lil-khabithat, Wal-tayyibatu lil-tayyibin, Wal-tayyibuna lil-tayyibat. And we mentioned three interpretations for this verse. We said that the words tayyibun, tayyibat, khabithun, and khabithat are awsaf. So Allah here is mentioning a description. And when there's a description, there's something or someone who is described. So depending on this individual or these individuals or these things that are being described, the interpretation, the meaning of the verse will differ. There are three interpretations that we mentioned last week. One said, here Allah Ta'ala is talking about bad words. Why bad words? We mentioned that in Surah An-Nur, Allah mentions the issue of ifk, how one of the wives of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, one of the wives of Rasulullah, one of his women sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, was accused of a very indecent and bad deed of adultery, God forbid. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala defended that specific lady, and in our narrations it is Maria al-Qibtiyya rahmatullah ta'ala alayha. So obviously such words are awful words. So Allah ta'ala mentions, based on the first interpretation, he mentions to the people that bad words belong to who? Not to good people. They belong to bad people, right? Or to ruthless people. Meaning that if you're a good person, we don't expect you to say something that's bad. So if the good person says something that's bad, we remind him that you're good. What's wrong with you? You shouldn't say such words. These words don't belong to you. Yes, if someone is bad, someone has chosen to follow the evil path, then you expect him to say bad things, right? It fits his character. Not that he should say bad things. No, he shouldn't. But you expect him. If he says bad words, ruthless words, and the likes, you say, what else do you expect? This person is following, a bad path. He's following the evil path. So that was the first interpretation. The second interpretation said, here Allah Ta'ala is talking about, actions. So for the first interpretation, he's speaking about words. So he's telling you that the bad words belong to bad people or to ruthless people, whereas the good words belong to who? To the good people, to people who are pure. Jayyid. or people who are sweet. The second interpretation said, no, Allah Ta'ala here is talking about actions. So the interpretation presents a wider or more general meaning. The third interpretation, as we said here Allah Ta'ala is talking about men and women. Men and women. Jayyid. And we said that there's a tradition by Imam al-Baqir and by Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam that mentions that point. All right? So now a question comes to mind. This was the last point we mentioned last week. I mentioned a question comes to mind, which is, if Allah is telling us that good women or pure women belong to good men and pure men, and vice versa, bad women or ruthless women belong to bad men or ruthless men and vice versa, then how come we see sometimes certain women who are good, who are married to men who are not the best people, who are not the best men? In fact, they might be bad men. And you see the exact opposite. Sometimes you see a good man who's married to an awful lady. But Allah is saying, الطيبون للطيبات. We'll read the verse again. الخبيثات للخبيثين والخبيثون للخبيثات والطيبات للطيبين والطيبون للطيبات. So, doesn't this mean that the Quran is presenting an incorrect meaning? No. Quran is not saying that whenever two people get married, if the lady's a good lady, she's going to have a good husband. And if the husband is a good husband, he's gonna have a good wife. Quran is not saying that if the wife is a bad wife, her husband is going to be a bad husband. And if the husband is a bad husband, his wife is going to be a bad wife. That's not what the Quran is saying. Quran Kareem is saying that the suitable spouse for a good man is who? A good woman, a good lady. He's not saying that every good man will get married to a good lady, because that's not the case. He's saying the suitable spouse for a good man is a good lady. The suitable spouse for a good lady is a good man. The suitable spouse for someone who's bad, someone who's ruthless, is who? Someone who's bad, someone who's ruthless. Jayyid. That is this or that individual's match. Makes sense? But in the outer world, whether we look at the past or present, we see that sometimes, we see that sometimes a good man truly gets married to a good lady. Can we think of some examples here? Yes. مثلا Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa marries Khadija alayhim as-salam, the master of mankind, the master of all creations, sallallahu alayhi wa marries a lady who was by far one of the greatest creations of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Jayyid. Amir al-Mu'mineen marries Sayyidah Zahra salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhima. The light marries the light. All right. Then again, sometimes you see the exact opposite. You see an evil man who gets married to an evil lady. For example, Abu Sufyan and Hind. You were thinking that, right? Abu Sufyan and Hind. Perfect match, right? It's the perfect match. This man is evil to the bone, right? Polytheism had reached his bones, and that lady was evil to the bones. That man, Abu Sufyan, continuously fought Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam until Fatah Mecca took place, and he realized that khalas, if he does not become Muslim, then he will have to face his punishment. So he pretended to be a Muslim when in reality he was a disbeliever in disguise. Hind, on the other hand, did the same. When Fatah Makkah took place, she pretended to enter Islam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi, Rasulullah pardoned them both. In what sense? Not in the sense that he forgave them, but he did not exact his punishment. In that sense, he did not exact his punishment on Abu Sufyan or Hind, on those two individuals. Hind, as all of you know, was the lady who wanted one of three to be killed in Uhud. She told Wahshi that she would give him a reward if he killed Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or Ali alayhi salam, or Hamza. She wanted one of those three, which indicated that these were the most important three individuals on the battlefield in Uhud. Wahshi told her that he cannot kill Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or he realized that he couldn't kill him. Why? Because he was surrounded by his companions. So he said that the companions of the Prophet would protect him, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And as for Ali, he realized that Amir al-Mu'mineen is super careful when he's fighting. He fights, he destroys the enemy, but he's very cautious. So he looks around him. He looks right and left. He's very cautious. Hence, you cannot pull a sudden attack on Amir al-Mu'mineen when he's fighting, alayhi salam. As for Hamza, salamullahi alayhi, Wahshi saw that he could kill Hamza. Why? Because Hamza was very brave and obviously super strong, but when he would attack, he would charge forward. So he saw that Hamza was not as cautious as Ali salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, and then Wahshi la'natullah ala al-zalimeen, he did whatever he did. Right. So Hind and Abu Sufyan, what do you say here? You have, a khabith who's married to a khabitha. Done deal. The same applies to Abu Lahab and his wife. Both were evil. And again, sometimes if you look at the past or the present, you see a good lady who was married or is married to a bad man. One great example on this regard is Asiya bint Muzahim alayha salam. Asiya, salamullahi alayha, was one of Sayyidat Nisa'i al-Alameen, one of the greatest women in the history of mankind. She was married to who? To Fir'aun. Fir'aun Musa alayhi salam. That Fir'aun was also evil to the bone. In some of our traditions, he has a specific spot in Jahannam designated for him, for that Fir'aun. Amongst, other individuals as well who have special or specific positions in Jahannam just for them. At the pit of Jahannam, on the very bottom layer of Jahannam. So she married Fir'aun, subhanAllah. Now, why did she marry him? Personally, I'm unsure. Allahu alam what led to that marriage. But obviously, there's a wisdom that we derive from the marriage of Asiya bint Muzahim alayha salam with Fir'aun. So Fir'aun was evil. Asiya was a good lady. Asiya never disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what our traditions say. There's a hadith stating that لم تكفر بالله طرفة عين. She never disbelieved in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, when it says لم تكفر بالله طرفة عين, it means that she never disbelieved before she met Musa. Yes, which means she was different. She did not believe in Pharaoh's path, or did not follow his path. Yeah. She did not hold the same beliefs as Pharaoh. واضح؟ And the lady, Salamullahi alayha, she gave up ad-dunya, whole world, for what? For Allah and Musa alayhi salam. That is a great manifestation or an extreme manifestation of zuhud, of asceticism. Being the wife of Pharaoh means what? It means you're the queen. You're the queen. Like Pharaoh was the emperor, she was the queen, she was his wife. So basically she could get whatever she wanted, right? She had fame, she had popularity, she had power, she had maids, she had gold, silver, you name it. She left all of that and she was killed ultimately by Pharaoh at the end. For who? For Allah and for Musa alayhi salam. Interestingly, in Surah Al-Tahrim, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Asya alayhi salam and Maryam at the end of Surah Al-Tahrim, and he mentions a supplication that Asya uttered. She said, Rabbi ibnili indaka baytan fil jannah. And this supplication is beyond beautiful. She asks Allah Ta'ala to build a house for her in heaven. Imagine, this is a queen, and queens are used to what? Not houses. They're used to castles, mansions, right? But she says, I just want a house. It's as if she's saying, Ya Rab, a house built by you in heaven is worth more than all of these castles that I can attain by being the wife of Pharaoh. Meaning, a house built by you, Ya Allah, in heaven is worth more than the whole world it contains. That's a great manifestation of faith and a great manifestation of zuhud, of asceticism. Yet this lady, Asya, was married to who in ad-dunya? Pharaoh. Ya subhanallah. Can someone say that she was the right match for Pharaoh? Obviously no. He was the right match for her? No. But for some reason, the marriage took place. طيب, what's one wisdom behind that marriage? We said there's a wisdom that we can derive from that marriage. One wisdom is that at the end of the day, every human being must choose his path. And every human being can choose to follow the right path if they truly want to follow it. Asya was the wife of Pharaoh. And obviously she did not have the upper hand, she had the lower hand. So here, she was living in an atmosphere of shirk, an atmosphere of polytheism. And there were many things that could draw Asya away from the path of truth, right? She was surrounded with dunya, surrounded with worldly items or worldly issues that can draw a person away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But she chose to follow the path of truth, although her own husband was claiming to be God forbid. So it shows you that at the end of the day, even if someone is in a bad atmosphere, if he or she wants the truth, they truly want the truth, they will follow it. So even if someone comes, for example, from a bad family or a bad society, his family or society are deviant, but that person wants Allah, wants Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, wants Ahlul Bait alayhim salam, if he truly wants them, he will follow. طبعا, don't misunderstand me. In some cases, you have to change your atmosphere. You have to change your location or change your atmosphere, because wherever you are, the atmosphere that exists where you live is a polluted atmosphere. But I'm not talking about that right now. I'm not talking about the issue of changing, your location, going to a different part in this world because you live somewhere, you live in a place that does not help you be pious, that does not bring you closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only thing I'm saying right now is even if someone lived amongst a bad society or amongst an evil family, if that someone wants the truth, then he will follow it. That's one lesson, one wisdom we derive from the marriage of Asya alayhi salam and Farah. Of course, it is interesting to know and important to know that based on our traditions, Asya in heaven marries someone else. Dunya, she was married to Pharaoh, but in heaven she marries Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, the Prophet of God, the greatest Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam. Afwan? Khadija? Oh, she's with the Prophet as well. Oh, definitely. Definitely. Yes. Right. And we find the opposite as well. Sometimes when you look at the past or the present, you see a good man who was married or is married to a bad lady. Can we think of examples? Can we think of any examples of a good man who was married to a bad lady? Prophet Lut alayhi salam, Prophet Lut alayhi salam, Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi, right? Lut and Nuh, they had bad wives. Rasulullah also had, unfortunately, some of his wives were bad. Some were good, obviously, and some were not good. They were evil. They were bad. Imam al-Hassan, as Sister Nuzara mentioned, Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam was married to Jada, la'natullah alayha. Imam Jawad alayhi salam was married to al-Fadl, la'natullah alayha. So you have cases where a good man or a superb man marries a lady who's not too good, or in fact a lady who's evil, a lady who's bad. Come on, there's a reason for this. These marriages, when we're talking about the marriage of the infallibles, alayhim salatu wassalam, the marriages of the infallibles, and we see that one infallible married a lady who was not good, who was evil, obviously there's a reason behind this. There's a reason why that marriage took place. The infallible would not marry a specific individual just because. You wouldn't marry a specific individual for no reason. There's a reason. Jayyid, there's a reason. We might know the reason and we might not. But one thing is for sure. One should not use these marriages as an example for himself or for his children or for his brothers and sisters. You might tell me, what do you mean? I mean the following. I can't say Imam al-Hassan alayhi salam married Jada, la'natullah alayha, who was evil, right? She ended up killing the Imam. Hence, I'll marry any random lady, even if she's evil. Imam al-Hassan did the same. No. Number one, who tells you that when Imam al-Hassan married her, she was revealing her evil? Perhaps she was not. Perhaps she was revealing that she was a good person, right? And then she revealed her evil. Even if I suppose that Imam al-Hassan alayhi as-salatu was-salam, even if I suppose that Imam al-Hassan married her, although she was revealing her evil from the start, again, even if I suppose this does not mean that we should do the same. How do we know? Because the Imams themselves told us, choose your wives carefully. And they told our women, choose your husbands carefully. So we understand that Imam al-Hassan's case, for example, or Imam al-Jawad's case, salamullahi alayhima, these were cases of exception. These were cases of exception. Yes, we can still derive lessons from such marriages. We can still derive lessons from such marriages. For example, If a good man, a righteous man, gets married to a lady who appears to be a mu'mina, who appears to be a lady of good morals, and then she turns out to be, a terrible lady. She turns out to be a disobedient slave of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then he can relieve himself by saying, you know what? I'm not better than Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. I'm not better than Imam al-Jawad salamullah alayhima. Both of them were tested with this test, and I will follow the lead of my Imams. Just as they remain patient, I will remain patient as well. I will use them as role models to remain patient and to remain faithful, although I am tested with a difficult test. It's not easy to have a wife or a spouse that is disobedient, a spouse that, is not righteous, a spouse that's evil, God forbid. So we can still make use of these marriages and derive lessons from them. جيد. طبعا the same applies if a lady got married to a man who apparently was good, apparently was faithful and had good morals, and then that man turned out to be a terrible man. Is that possible? Yes, it's possible. Because sometimes a person hides what lies within his character. And sometimes no, sometimes a person, it's not a matter of hiding what lies within your character, but a person changes with time. Yani, today I get married to someone who is mu'min, right? To a mu'mina, who's khaluqa, who has good morals. 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, that person might change. Or I might change. صح? It's always possible that a person might change. As long as we are in a dunya, our test continues to run. And our test comes to an end at the time of death. If I'm a believer today, then that does not mean I will be a believer tomorrow. Yes, I should strive to believe tomorrow. I should strive to be pious tomorrow. Hence, the believers ask Allah for what? For thabat, thabitna ya Allah. Keep us on the straight path. Every day in salat, we say, ihdina siratan mustaqim. Guide us to the straight path. Question, if I'm already on the straight path, if I'm following Ali salawatullah wa salamu alayhi, I'm following Ahlul Bait salawatullah wa salamuhu alayhim, what is the meaning of ihdina siratan mustaqim? I'm already on the straight path. So I ask Allah to guide me to the straight path. Imam Ali alayhi salam answers. He says, here we're asking Allah for thabat. If we're already on the straight path, we're asking Him to keep us there, to keep us on the straight path. Jayyid? So, yes, it is possible that someone marries a good person with good morals, but later on, that person, whether it's a male or a female, that person changes and becomes evil, God forbid. Have there been people in the past who changed, people who were good and then they became evil? Yes. Zubair was one of them. Zubair was a good man, was a Shia, he was a follower of Imam Ali, but near the end of his life, he became an enemy of Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, and he fought Imam Ali alayhi salam in the battle of the Camel. He was one of the three chiefs, one of the three heads who gathered a humongous army to fight the embodiment of truth, alayhi salawatullah wa salamuhu alayh. Bal'am bin Ba'ura also was good, then he turned evil. Bal'am bin Ba'ura was a scholar amongst Banu Israel. He was a scholar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had given him what the Quran al-Kareem calls ayat, signs, possess signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Beautiful. What happened near the end of his life? The man transgressed and became an enemy of Musa and wanted to supplicate against Musa alayhi salam. Imagine. Thinking, that he's closer to Allah than who? Than Musa alayhi salam. When Musa is his prophet, Musa is his messenger. Salamullahi alayhi. Meaning the messenger of Allah sent to Bal'am bin Ba'ura and his likes. So yes, a person might change. A person might change. All right? Here we have 2 points to mention. When the verse says al-khabithatu, let's read the verse again. al-khabithatu lil-khabithin والخبيثون للخبيثات والطيبات للطيبين والطيبون للطيبات. Allah Ta'ala is mentioning who is the suitable match for who? For the khabitha. And who's the suitable match for the khabith? Who is the suitable match for the tayyiba? And who is the suitable match for the tayyib? Keep that in mind. If you understand this point, then you'll understand that there is no contradiction between what the verse is saying and between what we see when we look at the past, marriages that took place in history, or we look at current marriages that are taking place in the present. That's the first point. The second point is, we said that a person might get married to someone who is apparently good, but then finds out that this individual is not too good. Or he might get married to someone who's actually good, but that person with time changes and becomes evil. Does this mean that a person should not get married because he does not know what to expect, because there's, a chance his spouse or her spouse will not be the best person? What do you think? Should we refrain from zawaj, from marriage, because there is that possibility that we will end up with the wrong person? Why not?
We try to fix it. And even today, if you want kids, you get the kids and then probably know that.
Excellent. Well, one should definitely not refrain from marriage. Refraining from marriage is wrong, right? We said that Islam highly encourages people, men and women, to get married. And it actually encourages us to get married at an early stage in life. Jayyid, what we call early marriage. It does tell us to choose our spouses carefully, but at the same time, we cannot forget that Islam doesn't only encourage us to get married. In some cases, it tells us it's wajib on you to get married. How? The fuqaha, the jurists, say that if a person fears falling into sin because he's not married or she's not married, then he has to get married. Yeah, if they don't fear falling into sin because they're single, then in that case, it would be highly recommended to get married. Right. So one should not change his mind about marriage and should not say, you know what, I will not get married because there is a chance that I will end up with the wrong person, or I will end up with a person who's not too good. At the end of the day, life is a test. Everything, every segment of our life is a test. And even our marriage is a test. Even when you're married to someone who's good, someone who has good morals, someone who's faithful, someone who's a true supporter, someone who truly supports you in this world and supports you to reach higher levels of perfection. Even when you're married to such a person, your marriage is a test. How is it a test? It's a test of thankfulness. Will you thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for the blessing He has given you or not? It's also a test of patience. Because when you get married, obviously marriage comes with certain difficulties or certain challenges. Those are good difficulties, good challenges, because they help us grow. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to see whether we will be patient at overcoming those difficulties and enduring them, at enduring those difficulties and challenges and overcoming them or not. Jayyid. So life is a test, and life is filled with uncertainties. If someone doesn't want to get married, chooses to refrain from marriage because he fears getting married to someone who might change later on, then in that case, that person should not do anything in his life. Because life is what? Filled with uncertainties. Whatever you do, it's always possible that things will not go the way you want them to go. It's always possible that you will encounter certain unexpected outcomes. For example, here you can think of many examples. I'll give one or two, or maybe three. When we walk outside our house and we go, let's say, to our school or our local mosque or workplace, isn't there a possibility that when we are on the road, we might go through a car accident? Isn't there a possibility that, someone will run me over with their car? It's possible. It's possible. Does that mean that I should stay home and I shouldn't go to the mosque or to my workplace? Because there's that possibility that I will encounter an unexpected outcome. No. Alas, you do tawakkul, you rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you do your homework, meaning you ensure that you take a safe road or a safe path to school or to the mosque or to your workplace, and then let whatever happens happen. Right? The same applies to, for example, applying for a job. You apply for a job hoping to attain that job. Is there a possibility that you will not be given the job? Yes. Is there a possibility that you will be given the job, but you will not be happy after you attain that job? Yes. Is there a possibility that you will have co-workers who will be disturbing? Co-workers who will envy you? Co-workers who might turn your life into a living hell when you're in that specific setting? Yes. Does that mean I should refrain from working or applying for halal jobs? No. I do my homework. I try my best to choose a job that is, number one, halal. It obviously has to be halal, has to be lawful. I try my best to choose a job that suits me, right? And a job I am comfortable with. I also choose a workplace I am comfortable with. And then khalas, I do tawakkul. I rely on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then let whatever happens, happen. So life is filled with uncertainties. You never know what's going to happen tomorrow. SubhanAllah. I think I said this before, but I'll say it again. Our life in this world is like a book. Jayyid. And every day is a new chapter. It's a new chapter. We're reading this book. How are we reading it? By living our life. Now, there's a decree. There's a qada and qadar. There's a decree that belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah ta'ala decrees that certain things will happen in my life and your life and the life of John and Rob and Mary and Elizabeth and all other human beings. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Life is filled with uncertainties, right? Life is filled with uncertainties. But every day we discover what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has decreed for us. Makes sense? Every day we read a new chapter of our life and we discover what has Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decreed for us until we go through our final moments and we leave this finite world. ختم الله لنا جميعا بخير بحق محمد وآل محمد صلوات الله وسلامه عليه. So The answer is no. A person should not refrain from marriage just because there is a possibility he or she will end up with someone who's not too good. Yes, it is essential that we do our homework. One might tell me, what do you mean? You've been saying this in a bunch of lessons, in multiple lessons. Do your homework. What's my homework? My homework, your homework, our homework when we want to get married or we want to marry our children to certain individuals is to apply the guidelines of Ahlul Bait. Apply the guidelines of Ahlul Bait. Look at the person. Apparently, is he faithful or not? Is she faithful or not? Does she have good morals or not? We work with what appears, right? We don't know what lies inside the hearts of the human beings. On top of that, as we said in one of the past lessons, perform an istikhara shar'iyya. We explained what istikhara shar'iyya is, right? So that you ensure that Allah Ta'ala guides you to the right route. So that you ensure that you're doing the right thing by getting married to that specific individual. Right. We're almost out of time. Let me mention one more point and then we'll continue next week. Bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So next week, inshallah, if we're still alive, we'll begin with the narrations that speak about the good husband. We've spoken about the good wife. We've mentioned some traditions regarding the good wife. Inshallah, next week, we'll speak about the good husband. What are the traits of a good husband, of a good man? Bi'idhnillah subhanahu wa ta'ala. One last point I want to mention tonight specifically is initially, or say in general, no one gets married to get divorced. So when you're getting married permanently, you expect to stay with that person until one of you passes away or both of you pass away. So naturally, in general, people do not get married so they can get divorced later. But divorce is a reality. Sometimes divorce takes place. Sometimes you get married to a person and subhanAllah, you don't get along with that individual, problems take place, and you end up divorcing that individual. You end up divorcing them or you go through divorce. The reason I say this is the man is able to divorce his wife in Islam, right? As for the wife, she gets divorced. Divorce is not in her hands. Yes, she may take wikala from the man to divorce herself from him, which we can talk about later on, inshallah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if the man agrees. But essentially, the man, divorce lies in the hand of the man, not the hand of the lady. So sometimes divorce takes place. If divorce takes place, do not despair. Why? If divorce takes place, when divorce happens, someone might think that, you know what, I got nothing from this marriage. You know, this marriage was a complete loss, which might not be the case. If you got married with a person, if you got married to a person for an X amount of, let's say, months or years, and then for some reason you divorced that individual, it doesn't mean that no benefit came out of that marriage. On the contrary, you might have acquired a lot of benefit. So remain hopeful and stay positive. Mathalan, one great benefit that you might have acquired is a child or multiple children. Allah Ta'ala blessed you with children from that marriage. That's good. That's beautiful. Possibly that marriage, which consisted of problems and headaches, made you a stronger person. Yes? What doesn't kill you will make you stronger, as they say. Sahih? no pain, no gain. So yes, you didn't expect to go through headaches. You didn't expect to go through problems, but you went through them. You did not expect to get divorced, and you got divorced. This doesn't mean that there was absolutely no benefit acquired from that marriage. No. On the contrary, if you look carefully, you most likely will be able to find some sort of benefit that you acquired from that marriage. I think keeping these points in mind is important in case one day, la samahallah, God forbid, someone goes through a divorce. I always like to use this example, the example of Zainab bin Jahash and Zayd ibn al-Haritha. These two individuals got divorced, and both were Muslimin, and both were good people, which tells you that when two people get divorced, it doesn't mean that one of them is bad. Yes, maybe they didn't get along. Obviously, they divorced for a reason. They went through divorce for a reason. They might not have gotten along, sure, but it doesn't mean that they're evil. Zainab bin Jahash was good. She was one of the good wives of Rasulullah. After Zayd, she was married to who? To Rasulullah. Allah married Zainab bin Jahash to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And she was his cousin, by the way. They were related. Zayd, on the other hand, was the second martyr of Mu'tah, rahmatullah alayh, and was the adopted son of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. He wasn't his biological son, but he was adopted by the Prophet. He was a good man. Both were good, but subhanallah, they did not get along. And so, divorce took place. What's one benefit that stemmed from their marriage? One benefit was teaching the Muslimin and teaching the world that your adopted son is not like your biological son. You can marry the wife of your adopted son after he divorces her, but you can't marry the wife of your biological son after he divorces her. That's a big lesson that we learned from the marriage, that we derived from the marriage of Zayd ibn al-Haritha and Zainab bin Jahash, because it was followed by what? By Rasulullah's marriage with Zainab bin Jahash. Sallallahu ala Rasulullah wa ala alih wa rahimahullah Zainab wa Zayd rahmatullah alayhima. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen wa sallallahu ala Mustafa Muhammad wa alihi at-tahirin.